Hey, what's up guys? So yesterday we got a few changes on the beta for Elemental Shaman, which solved some issues. It made some things better, but it also created a few new issues. One big change that we got is our Flame Shock tick rate has been reduced to 2 seconds from 3 seconds, which is pretty much what it used to be. This is really nice as it gives us more Lava Surge procs, or a higher chance for Lava Surge procs. The sad thing about it, however, is that they stated as well that they won't increase the duration back to its original duration of what it was before, which was, I think it was 24 seconds, either 22 or 24 seconds. The second change we got is with Static Discharge. Now it actually scales with spell power instead of attack power, so now it actually does damage. Nothing else really changed except that it's now working as intended. I don't think we'll pick this still because Echo of the Elements is such quality of life, but it's nice that it actually works now. The third change Elemental got is that Aftershock now works for both Earthshock and Earthquake as well. This just allows the talent to not be completely useless on AoE or when using the legendary that increases our Earthquake damage after using Earthshock, because then you would use Earthshock and you would only have a chance to reset that one, or reset the Maelstrom for that one, and not have a chance to reset the Maelstrom by spending Earthquake. The next change is Echoing Shock, which it also got changed back to what it was before, or what it was a while ago. It now allows Earthquake to also be duplicated, which makes it so that both of our spenders can now be duplicated with this ability. There's also one thing with this that they fixed recently, which was if you had Echoing Shock, it would basically, if you would cast Lava Burst and then Echoing Shock instantly after, it would duplicate your Lava Burst because the damage of Lava Burst only happens after your Echoing Shock went off. Now this was a bug, and now if you use Echoing Shock after a cast, you can actually choose what you want to duplicate after you did that cast. So basically what would happen before sometimes was I would, for example, I would cast something, instantly Echoing Shock, and then I would want to duplicate my Earth Shock, but I couldn't because it would have duplicated the cast that I did before the Echoing Shock. But anyway, it's fixed now, so nothing to worry about anymore. Now the last change to this down throw, which I'm very happy about, is that they changed Elemental Blast to generate 30 Maelstrom instead of using 60. To me it always felt weird that they would make Elemental Blast cost Maelstrom, especially considering it has a cooldown. But generally it feels like a more fun and useful talent to me now than it was before, as the 30 generation can really speed up your Maelstrom generation, as it basically replaces a Lightning Bolt cast every 12 seconds, which it only generates 8 Maelstrom. It does less damage, and it does not give you a stat buff after using it. Now, there's multiple oversights to this change, which they will most likely be changed in next week's build, but I'll mention them anyway. When using the legendary that causes Earthshock to make your next Earthquake deal 350% of its normal damage, this has always worked with Elemental Blast as well, because Elemental Blast was a spender before. Now obviously this is something they most likely forgot, considering they just want to make your non-Earthquake Maelstrom spenders proc this effect. But now that Elemental Blast generates 30 Maelstrom, this is quite strong and possibly not intended, so let me show you real quick. This is the legendary I'm talking about. When you cast Earthshock or Elemental Blast, your next Earthquake will deal 250% additional damage. So if I would just build some resources here, I'm just gonna get to just enough. Okay, now I would cast Elemental Blast. And then, see, I get the proc. I get the proc for 350% Earthquake damage, which is, it's pretty insane. So I'm pretty sure this is not intended, as they intended it that you would spend 60 Maelstrom and then you buff your next Earthquake. Now the second oversight is this legendary. When you cast Earthshock or Elemental Blast, gain Lava Surge and increase the damage of your next Lava Burst by 30%. This is obviously an oversight again, as Earthshock spends 60 Maelstrom, and Elemental Blast now gains 30 Maelstrom from spending 60 Maelstrom before. So now on single target you would get this effect a lot more than you normally would. Now sadly I don't think the legendary works properly because Lava Surge makes your next Lava Burst cast instant. Now this legendary effect will also increase its damage by 30%, but if I would cast Elemental Blast right now, I would only gain the effect of the damage, but I don't actually get the instant Lava Surge. Maybe it's a bug that maybe I need to be out of Lava Bursts for it to work. But anyway, if this legendary would work properly, together with Elemental Blast and Earthshock, it's way too overpowered. Like, there's no way that this is intended. Okay, let's try it out. Okay, we just got the damage, like Lava Burst damage increased by 30%. So I guess they'll fix this legendary at some point, but today is not that day. And the same thing again for Surge of Power. Surge of Power works with both Earth Shock and Elemental Blast. Honestly, I feel like this change was made last minute without them thinking of the actual implications, because it honestly didn't take very long to realize how many things rely on Elemental Blast. So I think this was like a last day thing where they were like, oh, you know, people don't like Elemental Blast being a spender, so let's just make it a big generator now. And then all the things that rely on Elemental Blast, they stay the same. So I think next week we'll see all of these interactions removed, but it's still important to mention them anyway, just in case they don't get removed. Now the next change they did, which I'm also very happy about, as it's one of my more favorite playstyles for Elemental Shaman. It's a change that makes it so the Frost Shocks you cast with Ice Fury, they now generate 8 Maelstrom. This is really nice, as it's like casting 4 Lightning Bolts that are instant cast, but they do double the damage of a Lightning Bolt. In general, it makes the flow of playing with Ice Fury a lot better, as you now have a lot more Maelstrom generation than you did before. Now the next change is to Ascendance, which is a pretty big one. When they released the abilities they were taking off the GCD, I was surprised to not see Ascendance in there. So I suspected they would either remove the ability, or they would make it do something when you press the button. So my guess was correct, and now when you press Ascendance, you will refresh all of your Flame Shocks to 18 seconds, and you will cast a Lava Burst on all the targets that have a Flame Shock already. Now, I still believe that this still isn't an ability I want to pick unless I have no other choice, but it's a good thing that they made it a bit more interesting at least. There's a few interactions here that you should know about. Now, the first one is that Ascendance states that it refreshes all your existing Flame Shocks to 18 seconds, but what the ability actually does internally is that it reapplies your Flame Shock to all the enemies that already have the ability or already have Flame Shock on them. The reason I mention this is because when you have Fire Elemental up, all your freshly applied Flame Shocks last twice as long, let's see here. While the Fire Elemental is active, any newly applied Flame Shock lasts 100% longer. So Flame Shocks would last 36 seconds if you applied during Fire Elemental. But because internally they get reapplied with Ascendance, if you cast Fire Elemental first and then Ascendance, then all the mobs that have a Flame Shock on them will now have a 36 second Flame Shock, which is pretty big. Now with this interaction, I have no clue if they'll decide to keep it and change the wording, or if they're gonna fix it. Either way, it's a very interesting interaction. Now another interaction which is actually pretty interesting is a legendary interaction. Let me show you real quick. This legendary, which gives you Lava Burst, a 5% chance to proc Ascendance for 6 seconds. It will also trigger the initial effect of Ascendance that they added, and it will refresh all of your Flame Shocks and cast Lava Burst on those targets. So even though I don't like Ascendance at all besides the interesting new addition, this legendary just became a lot more interesting than what it was before, just because if you are doing a council fight, for example, and you have to focus on one mob, you just keep casting Lava Burst, and whenever it procs Ascendance, all your Flame Shocks will be reapplied, which is really useful because then you don't have to micromanage as much. The one downside is that they will all run out at the same time. So unless you're very lucky, you're gonna have to reapply them way before they actually are about to run out if you want to keep the Flame Shocks on multiple targets. Now let me actually show you how the new Ascendance works. Okay, so when I apply the next Flame Shock, I'm gonna cast Ascendance, and then you'll see me cast Lava Burst on all the targets plus refresh the duration. Okay, so you see the duration here is refreshed, duration here is refreshed, and here it's refreshed. Now I'm going to show you what happens when you cast Fire Elemental before you cast your Ascendance. Okay, so now I'm going to apply Flame Shocks to about 3 targets, then I'm going to use my Fire Elemental, and then I'm going to cast Ascendance, and then you'll see the difference. Okay, now Fire Elemental, and then Ascendance. And now these are 36 seconds. This I can confirm because if I apply a new one, you see the duration, or it runs out pretty much at the same rate, both of them. So now you have 4 36 seconds Flame Shocks, which is, it could be really nice for console fights, but honestly, it remains to be seen like how useful these things are. So now let me show you the legendary when it actually procs. I'll try to keep Flame Shock up on 2 enemies, and at some point hopefully you'll see Lava Burst go to 2 enemies and you see the lava Flame Shocks get refreshed. Okay, you saw here, it just triggered and everything, they all got refreshed, and I reapplied my Flame Shocks pretty much. Anyway, thanks for watching and see you next video.